My name is Tanner Haller, and I am a fourth-year student at NKU. I'm studying Human Services and Addictions with a minor in Religious Studies. I wanted to come to NKU because of its proximity to where I live while I was in high school, and it got me acquainted with some of the professors here at NKU, and just the amount of emotion and compassion they have for the students, and I knew that if the professors were on my side, then it was a good place to go. I feel I have found my calling in the Human Services and Addictions field. I like how the broadness of the major and program allowed me to find what I really want to do in the field. My favorite memory here at NKU was an opportunity I had with the orchestra to study abroad and put on a concert tour in Ireland a couple summers ago. It was a great experience because I was able to kind of find myself and be more independent and just be able to experience other cultures and just see the world. I received multiple scholarships here at NKU throughout the years, one of which was the Jane Dotson Endowed Memorial Scholarship, which has allowed me to not have to work so much so I could pursue internships in the field. I decided to intern at City Gospel Mission because of the impact my cousin's overdose had on me, and I want to be able to help those that are suffering from addiction and to hopefully prevent people from dying. So at the Blink concert coming up at the festival, I have the opportunity of leading my fellow students in the setup for the orchestra, as well as being a part of the orchestra playing at the concert. This is a really great experience for me because it allows me to further my leadership, as well as just being a great opportunity to engage in the community and put on this great concert. Without these scholarships, I wouldn't have been able to pursue these great opportunities that I have. To the friends of NKU, thank you. Without your support, I wouldn't have been able to find my calling at NKU, and I wouldn't have been able to engage in the community so that I know what my future holds.
Good morning. I think it's always good to start off with one of the videos of our students. Taylor's story is really common to many of our students. We actually profiled him in the thank you event that we have every fall for our donors, and it was right here on campus. And it's always so gratifying to see the response of so many of our supporters when they hear stories of Taylor and stuff, as you clearly heard his story as well. It's a reflection of all the great work that we do. So. Welcome to the Fall Forum. It's my honor and privilege to be here and to provide you with some of the details. I want to thank all of you for taking the time. I know this is an extremely busy time of the year, just a week before Thanksgiving, and then before we know it, it's going to be finals week and wrapping up and all that good stuff. So I really do appreciate the time that you're doing. But I thought we really should spend some time kind of going over things, some tremendous work that's going on all the time. And I thought sharing that broadly with the campus community is an important endeavor. So I want to start off with some highlights and accomplishments, moving on to some of the updates that we have, and clearly sort of winding down to some of the things looking ahead to spring 2020. So that's going to be the things, and hopefully my folks here will keep me on track. We've got quite a few slides. So let's start off with some of the main accomplishments. So hopefully many of you, as you were walking in, you saw that first graphic about today's NKU student, 2019. And I'm not so sure how many of you sort of really were surprised by some of the data. There was a lot to capture. We'll do a quiz at the end, just make sure that we follow. But one of the things that stood out, I think for many of you, that at least certainly for me, is nearly 50% of our students are first-generation students, first in their families to go to college. Even at the start of this semester, when we welcomed the class of 2023, we saw that 47% of them. When I share this statistic with folks in the community, there's always a little bit of this visible gasp. Really? Wow, we had no idea. And then, of course, it turns really right away to, that is amazing. We applaud NKU for continuing to embrace this mission of serving those students. Actually, one of our regents said it really best. NKU over the years has really evolved into a place where students who have many options will choose to NKU because of the quality of the academic experience. But for many students who don't have an option, NKU is still a place you can call home. And so it really is remarkable that we see this. So on November 8th, Friday, November 8th, along with all the other colleges and universities around the country, we celebrated National First Generation Day. So let me just take a quick poll here. I know we've got time and folks are already saying, oh my God, we're behind already. But how many of you were first in your family to go to college? Please raise your hands. Just look at that. Look at that. Let's give ourselves a big round of applause for that, really. So equally gratifying, the fact that we celebrate National First Generation Day, we have so many of our students, is the fact that they are being served by many of you who have had that experience and can relate to many of the challenges and issues that they face. So again, I applaud the work that we do every day. It's an important mission, it's notable work, and so again, many of the divisions and departments came together to make this celebration. It was really wonderful, and of course, we will keep this in the back of our minds as we go. A couple of profiles of students I wanted to share. This student, Summer Balzer, is actually profiled on our website. I don't know how many of you had seen that, but she's profiled on our website, and she has, again, one of many compelling stories that you can see here, right? She was, again, a first-generation student, comes from modest means, came fresh out of high school, came to NKU. This was a place she wanted to call home, and at age 19, life kind of took a strange turn, and she became a single mom, struggling to balance both school as well as life and her kid. And she didn't want to miss the opportunities to spend time with her son as well. And so she was trying to do homework between the time he was taking naps. And those of us, for many of us, it's been a while, so that's a good thing. But for those of us that remember having young kids, we know how difficult it is to try and squeeze in the work that you have to do during the time that my wife, Nita, was trying to complete her PhD while she was having 2 kids. It took her a long time. I couldn't figure out why, but the idea of balancing school and life and work is such a challenge. But the fact of the matter is what got in the way was financial, because she was going from work, she was going to school, and she was spending less time with her son. And when she got a call from the financial aid office offering her an opportunity for a scholarship, her words, she began crying, right? She was just like, yes, I have to apply. And then her strategy, which I thought was great, was she said, you know, I'm just going to tell my story. And if I get a scholarship, that's great. And so all she did was just tell her story. And of course, the good news is she got her scholarship. She's able to continue her work at school. So Summer is another great inspiration. She's doing what many of our students are already trying to do. The next story is another one of our students here. Some of you probably know him. He's been around on campus, spent a lot of time doing so much good work. Chinedo Asinugo is our student. He's a computer information technology major with computer forensics and information security minors. He was selected this year as one of the Forbes 30 under 30 scholars, which is a tremendous accomplishment for one of our students. This was a scholarship that he got to travel to Detroit, Michigan. That wasn't the good part, but I'm sorry for those from Detroit, Michigan. To be careful what I say here, so. But he traveled to the conference in October, and he was joined by leaders, founders, investors from all over the country in a 4-day immersive experience that included speakers like Serena Williams, Blake Griffin, and others. He was really exposed to a lot of good things, and it ended with a very powerful community day of service. So he is from Abuja, Nigeria. And again, we're so proud of the work that Chi is doing. And in fact, I think many of you probably know we're celebrating International Education Week. So his story becomes a great story to highlight the accomplishments of our international students as well. Switching to some of the faculty accomplishments, we had our 2nd annual Spotlight on Scholarship right here. This was the event that was held on October 24th in the Griffin Hall Digitorium. We had 20 faculty groups presenting their research, scholarship, and creative activity. Also, we had 2 musical interludes provided by our SOTA faculty as well. This year's winner of the Soul Award, which some of you probably know is named for the Norse goddess of enlightenment, was Zach Hart. Zach is right here. You can take a bow, wave to everybody. His research was on sense-making among parents of children with disabilities. So congratulations, Zach, and of course we're really proud of the work that our faculty do on a regular basis. It's a little bit of a dark picture, but this was a picture taken from Blink 2019. How many of you got a chance to brave the crowds of Blink 2019? Yes, it was quite something, especially the bridge. I'm glad you did. 1.5 million visitors. Apparently was the largest attended event in Cincinnati's history. And I think some of you know that this year they extended to the Northern Kentucky side as well. So it truly became a regional event. But most important, of course, is this presentation by our NKU Philharmonic Orchestra. I had a chance to spend time that evening watching their performance, truly outstanding. Our faculty members, Hans Schellhaus and Brad McCombs, along with Amy Gillingham from the music department, were part of this. She was the conductor. It was also part of the sound and light experience, which was entitled Light Streams. And again, this was a great showcase that so many people were aware of and really got a chance to experience the wonderful work of our students under the direction of our faculty. So it was really great to see that as well. Also earlier last week, we celebrated Veterans Day. Our Veterans Resource Station honored the legacy of those who serve on a regular basis, and we had a flag-raising ceremony, a wreath laying ceremony, as well as a bugle performance. The Veterans Resource Station, which is now being coordinated by Travis Roy, one of our alums, is doing an outstanding job of making sure that we continue to serve this very important constituent in our students. They are also sponsoring a Fill the Boot campaign that raises money to be sent to deployed Army National Guard units currently serving abroad. So if you haven't had a chance, please go ahead and find out more about that. As some of you know, NKU is known very well for being one of the best schools for military veteran support, according to Military Times. We have been nominated 7 straight years for this award nationally, which is by the publication, and it's the only Greater Cincinnati educational institution to make the list. So we have something to be proud of. That 2020 list and ranking is based on university culture, student support, academic policies, as well as cost and financial aid. So again, really, really proud of the work that we're doing here. Wanted to share this with you, just an update on where we are with grant funding. Just as of these first quarter, if you will, from July through the end of September, we had 26 major grants exceeding $5.4 million in funding received across the campus. To give you a sense of this, last year we had about 93 grants totaling about $7.5 million. So we are on pace to not only break that record, but perhaps for the first time hit the $10 million mark on this campus. So again, what an impressive level of work and engagement by the faculty. As you can see from the bottom here, we had 8 of those awards went to the NKU Institute for Health Innovation, over $4 million for that, so truly remarkable, but some wonderful other grants, the NSF grant for student success, an EDA I-6 grant to bring about innovation in health, logistics, and technology, as well as a RISE grant from Frankfurt to promote entrepreneurship. So again, not only is the money amount impressive, but it's the depth of the work that we do. In almost every instance, it's really tied to the needs of our students, and it's tied to regional engagement work, whether it's the health issue and the opioid crisis, or whether it's making sure more of our students, especially students of color and underrepresented students, move into the STEM fields. Again, a strong recommendation of the work and endorsement of the work that our faculty are doing. So again, this is just a tiny set of highlights that we have. There's so much more that we can share, and of course, it always is a great pleasure to be able to share that with the campus and the community writ large. So I want to turn then to some updates across various elements that we should be aware of. First and foremost, very important is our accreditation update, where we are with the SACS SOC accreditation timeline. I think so many of you are actively engaged in this work, so all of you know this very well, but just a quick recap. Last September, we started with the compliance certification submission across the different 10 standards. Early part of this year, in February, we had a focus report to address those recommendations. In April of this year, I think many of us knew we had the on-site visit from the SACS SOC reaccreditation team. It was about 10 people led by 2 presidents who were co-chairs. Actually, one of them was the chair, the other one was on the team. After their visit, and I think I shared with you in the spring how so impressed they were with their visit and the campus and the culture and what they felt in terms of momentum and collaboration, and that they really left with a sense that this is something, yes, they've done many visits, and you know, many institutions do a good job of making sure that we're meeting the standards, but he said what we found was something, a esprit de corps that they don't quite often see at many of the institutions. So a very strong validation of the work that we do. They did submit a recommendation along a couple of dimensions, 4 standards, the QEP, the assessments, both programmatic and general education, some feedback they needed in library resources. We submitted our response to them in October of 2019, and the final stage is a December notification by the SACS committee on our final reaccreditation information. So in December, we will be in attendance, and I will be there as well to meet with the SACS committees to get the final notification. And of course, I'm very hopeful that everything will be great. We can come back and share some of that good news. Also, there was some program accreditations in 2019. I may have shared this before, but it's always a matter of pride for us to ensure that NKU values this aspect of its work. It's an external validation. Despite all the changes in the landscape that we see, every program that can be nationally accredited is in fact nationally accredited NKU. It's a very strong sense of endorsement that we offer for our programs. And so whether it's ABET in our engineering technology programs, ACSB in our business programs, or of course many of the others that you see here. So these were some of the ones that were successful this past year. As you can see, the range of the programs is truly impressive as well. So, and all the letters that come from the accrediting agencies, again, just points to the quality of the work that we do. Some of you may have seen this news earlier this year. Cincinnati Christian University closed its doors rather suddenly. And as a result of that, I think over 700 students were left sort of adrift. And our folks and our team didn't waste a single minute recognizing a need in the community and the region for those students that were probably displaced and were wondering how they would complete their degree programs. We went right away to the press. We reached out. We offered a 50% tuition discount to current students attending the university, and to find ways in which we would help them transition to NKU. We also waived the application fees. We were looking to say we would waive the housing deposit if any of them needed housing, and so on. So really, as I think we were first out of the gate with this very proactive approach, and I really applaud our entire team that took the initiative to make this happen. We did host an event on November 7th for the students in Cincinnati so that they could get more information. As of last week, we had 85 undergraduate applications. 23 of them have been admitted. And we have 11 graduate applications, and one of them has been admitted to one of our programs. So I'm presuming this work will continue, but another great example of how we continue to make sure that we're serving the students in this region if there is a challenge. I wanted to give you a couple of other updates that are going on and that we should have a little bit more information either later this semester or certainly early this next semester. Gateway is one of our very, very important strategic partners, Gateway Community and Technical College. We've always had a great relationship with that institution, and of course, we have an established Gateway to NKU agreement that is in place. And so the question I posed to our team, and actually both Fernando and I have been having conversations, what does Gateway to NKU 2.0 look like? What's an improved version of that? Is it really achieving the outcomes that we want? Are we trying to get more transfer students? Are the pathways working well? It's always a good idea to sort of re-examine that framework. So a team from both sides is actively engaged in the work. They're looking at some really great ways in which we can enhance this partnership, including things like joint marketing and recruitment, dual admission, so students know that it's not a separate hurdle they have to face, that they can actually start. I've always maintained this, I think all of us know this, the most affordable, highly valued approach to getting a 4-year baccalaureate degree is to complete your 2 years at a community college, transfer seamlessly to NKU, and then complete the remaining 2 years. That 2+2 model that's been in existence for a long time in this country is the answer to affordability and quality and cost, but we are not quite living up to that expectation and the aspiration of many of our students. We've said that's the most affordable way to complete your baccalaureate. Yet we find that many students somehow get lost in the shuffle and don't always successfully transition. We have to own that a little bit more than we do, and we have to find ways in which we do this. So we're going to be examining some elements of this to really make this pathway so clear for students, so transparent, and try and make sure that it's working as effectively as we can. So we'll certainly look for more information as the teams continue to work on that. Wanted to give you a quick update. This is our Further Faster campaign for NKU. I think many of you know that we launched the public phase of the campaign in May of this year. It's a $75 million campaign. As you can see, we have already raised $51 million towards that goal. In fact, just since May, we've already brought in about $1.7 million in new scholarships and student support services, and this will impact students across every college in this campus. I wanted to just share a story of Betsy Mitchell, one of our alums, who has been a great supporter of the institution, a 1992 alum. You can see and read her story up there. But again, it's just wonderful to see so many of our donors, alums, supporters, faculty, staff coming forward to help support the campaign. And nearly 12,000 donors, and that list is growing, despite the fact that we are still a very young university with only about 60,000 alums. We're doing some tremendous work in a bold campaign, and we'll continue to work on that. As you heard, certainly in the fall, we announced the big Lift Scholars program with generous donations from Bill and Sue Butler and Rich and Lisa Bainey, and that is continuing to momentum. When people hear about that Scholars program, they're all ears. They're happy to be part of it, and we've already added significant amounts to that amount, as you can see by the $1.7 million since May that we've been able to raise. So continue to have some great work that's going on. This is our version of the athletics update. Everyone know who this is?
Norse Nation, welcome to What's That Wednesday, where I'm going to find some students and ask them, what's that, when they're not wearing NKU Norse gear. Let's check it out.
This is my undergrad, actually.
So you're a grad student?
Yeah, I'm a law student.
So do you not have any Norse gear?
No.
It's What's That Wednesday. What's that? Our law student needs some NKU gear. What's your name?
Gabby Thatcher.
Gabby Thatcher.
Yeah.
NKU Chase Law School now. She's got some NKU gear to wear. On campus to class.
Thank you so
All right,
much.
Gabby. Sure.
I went to school there last year. I'm in the East University.
Oh, you really? Yeah, okay, great. So, like, it feels to me like that you need some This guy geared up so he can represent the right way. Right? No Norse action for this guy. Then I have to ask you, what's that? When you go to school Thomas More, then I have to assume that you're not wearing some Norse gear because you don't have any, right? So for What's That Wednesday, we're going to make sure we take care of What's That and put you in some Norse gear. How about that?
Okay.
Perfect fit, right?
Yeah.
So where's your Norse gear?
It's in my closet right now.
Is it really?
Yeah, yesterday was laundry day, so I'm good.
All right, well, we want to make sure that you have enough Norse gear.
All right, awesome.
Right? Especially if you're a basketball guy.
That's sweet.
What's That Wednesday? So we ask, what's that? All right?
All right.
We want to make sure that you have some Norse gear to wear. All right?
Sweet. Perfect. Awesome. Thank you.
I have to assume that you're not wearing a Norse shirt because you don't have any Norse gear. All right? So we call this What's That Wednesday? And I got to ask you, what's that? All right? And then I got to give you some good gear.
I thought you were going to have her
It's a little big, but it's our last one. Yeah, that was part of it. But
I thought you were going to have her wrestling.
there you go. Let's get a picture. Look at come on, jump in. See, she's got her. No, you want in on this.
In all seriousness, though, today is Wednesday, by the way. So if you're wearing the wrong gear, better watch out. Actually, Coach Horn is in getting ready to go to play Ball State this evening. So I know they're kind of busy, but yeah, we're happy to welcome him as the newest member of our coaching staff and his team. The Norse are off to a good start, and of course, I would encourage all of you to go out and check out all the games across all the different sports we offer. It's truly great to see our students compete. A couple of our programs are just about done, with the soccer season pretty much done. Volleyball is still in the works. We're waiting for the tournament, and of course we'll continue with the basketball season as we go. So, but we've seen an uptick in the number of men's basketball season tickets this year already. So that's a good sign. Close to 1,400 of those have been sold, and we're going to continue to do some good work on that. So. All right, let me share just a little bit about an international trip that I had the privilege of taking a little while ago. And I was told, and Francois is here in the audience, so I'm going to hold him to it. He happens to be a historian as well, so if there's a problem with this, you can talk to him about it. But I was told that, and we do have a former president in the audience, so we're going to have to see if this actually works out. But I was told that this was the first official capacity trip that an NKU president has made since its inception. Is that, Francois, you're sticking by that? You're sticking by that? And no objection so far, so I think we're going with that. But I wanted to share a little bit about this context of this, and then just share a little bit about what's going on. So our trip, Francois and I traveled to Japan and Vietnam. We have long-standing partnerships with both of these countries, long-standing with Japan, and we're beginning what I think will be a really wonderful, deep relationship with Vietnam as well, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. In Japan, we visited these three institutes. We have university partnerships in all three cities, Nagoya, Gifu, and Tokyo. In fact, the university in Gifu University, is our oldest international partner, right? We signed that agreement in 1992. And so it was sort of important to re-emphasize our commitment to our international partners. We have many of our own students studying abroad there for anywhere from a semester to a year. In fact, I had the occasion, if we go to the next slide, we had an occasion to meet with our NKU students. Now with the new degree in Japanese, we have even more, I think, interest in our students wanting to study there. And I had a chance to meet with three of our students, Val, Ian, and one of our students at Musashi University in Tokyo, to talk about their experience and how they were doing. What was pretty surprising, maybe not so much for many of us, is that this was not only their first study abroad experience, but this was the first time that they even traveled abroad, right? So again, we're opening up opportunities for students. We talk about wanting to make sure that Kentucky and Northern Kentucky University is connected to the world and vice versa. It was just wonderful to hear them speak Japanese and how much, and what a bold move, right? They're taking this big step at getting out of their comfort zone and going there, and of course, helping do that. We continued some signing of some partnerships with both in Japan, and then moved on to Vietnam. The trip to Vietnam was, I think, sort of a newer element of our work that I think is going to be really critical for us. So we visited about 6 different universities. We met with many government officials, but we also met with what are called gifted high schools in Vietnam. It's the fastest growing international student population at NKU. A year ago, we had 8 students, and today we have 31, and that number is growing. And if Francois was charming on this trip, we might have a few more coming in spring and certainly in the fall. But what I was really thrilled to see was that the desire on that part, as you know, we have a checkered history with Vietnam, but a great deal of, I think, commitment on the part of the Vietnamese students and their parents to want to send their students to study abroad and to come to the United States. So we're very pleased with that. We're looking to have some very deep partnerships. All of this will emerge in our comprehensive internationalization strategy that I know Francois is working on with several of you on that committee, and I'm anxious to see how that is. One of the elements that I want to connect is how can we connect this region that has global connections. All of us know the connections of this region to Japan, but there are great possibilities of connecting the businesses of this region to companies in Vietnam. It's one of those emerging economies that is receiving a great deal of investment, especially from Japan and Korea. So we have a huge potential to do this. I mentioned briefly to Jim Allen that they're looking for teacher training as a possible way of helping their teachers in those high schools. So I think our relationship will be very deep. It's not just on student mobility, but it's going to extend to other elements of the campus. So we'll be looking forward to some of those as well. A couple of other updates I wanted to make sure that you were aware of from administration and finance. Some of you probably know this. We are engaging in a master physical planning exercise beginning this fall. It has been at least 9 years since we engaged in a planning exercise. Everyone who comes to visit campus, and especially those that haven't been here for the last 4 or 5 years, they always say the same thing. We're just amazed at how much the campus has grown, how these facilities are so different. Of course, they talk about how beautiful the campus is. We have not really had a master physical plan in place to really map exactly where we should be and how should we be matching this with the enrollment, and something I'll talk about in a few minutes as well. So this will be a year-long exercise to really gauge not only space utilization, but to make sure that we have the right structures in place, the physical plan, and there'll be active engagement from the campus and from the community in developing this plan, and by the fall of 2020, we should be completed with that plan. We have identified a leading architectural firm, Ayers St. Gross, that has been selected to lead this effort, and they'll be looking at, as I said, everything: land use, space utilization, student life, community integration, transportation and parking, infrastructure, as well as utility planning. So a lot of elements that affect us across the institution. And as I said, by next fall, through active engagement throughout this year, we'll be looking at this. The 6-month assessments are really budget assessments. This is a way for us to gain better understanding of university budgets and the factors affecting those. Our cost and revenue drivers, making sure we do this. So one of the things I've asked for the divisions to do, working in close connection with Mike Hales in the administration finance area, is to work across the divisions and as well as with the colleges and the deans to talk about how are we doing in these first 6 months. This is a way for me to get more comfortable with understanding the nuances of our cost and revenue structure on this campus. We have a new budget model that is now almost 3 years in the making. I'm still trying to figure out all the elements of that. Is it doing what it's supposed to be doing? Is it really getting us to the point that we want to incentivize the outcomes that we want for the institution? So the 6-month assessment will occur in January. It will involve Mike and I meeting with the divisional leads, the vice presidents, as well as with the deans to talk about their cost and revenue structure. This is meant to both certainly help me better understand our budgets across the institution, but also to make sure that we surface any issues and challenges before things perhaps could be problematic. So just being a little bit more proactive about how are we doing with respect to our resources writ large as we close out the year and look to the next semester. It's a national best practice, as I've felt this is a good way for us to get a better sense of how it is. What I hear from many individuals is that and certainly our goal is to want to make sure we empower our divisions, our units, our departments, and certainly our colleges with resources to meet the needs that they have to do. So we're going to engage in that work as well. And then the third update is a process improvement initiative that was launched just about a few weeks ago. It is to look at, again, it's across the campus, it's to look at where are there improvement opportunities with respect to more effective and efficient use of resources and processes. Many of you may be familiar with something called the lean process. That's the equivalent of what we're trying to do here, to see how can we improve the things, make life easier and simpler for our faculty and staff in terms of processes, and hopefully align them better with the student success outcomes that we have. We've begun the on-campus visits for our Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer position. I think the search committee, and I want to thank all of them. Andy Durajai is our chair of that committee. I want to thank them for the work that they've done so far. We had a strong pool of about 35 candidates. They narrowed that down to about 9 semifinalists, and we have invited 3 of them for campus visits. In fact, the first one was just yesterday. So hopefully many of you had a chance to visit with the candidate at the open forum and to provide feedback. You'll be hearing more from Andy and the search committee as well. They will meet with various constituents on campus. The other 2 finalists will be on campus right after Thanksgiving. So please be sure to make some time to attend this, to attend the open forums, provide your feedback and input. We hope that soon after that, the visits, I'll meet with the committee and be in a position hopefully to finalize a selection by the middle of December and hopefully have a start date the early part of the year when it's mutually convenient for the finalist, the selection as well. So again, keep an eye out on the open forums. Okay, let's move to enrollment updates now and kind of give you a sense of where things are. There's going to be a lot of information here, so I do apologize for the sort of data dump, if you will, but I'm going to try and walk through as much as I can. And again, please hold your questions. Think about that. I'm going to try my very best to make sure we have time at the end for questions and so on. But let me just give you kind of the big landscape of where we are with enrollment, moving towards looking ahead to spring and some of the things we should be thinking about. So how did we do in the fall? We're sort of pretty much, the fall is pretty much wrapped up. We've got our reports done. The first column there is our projections. We always work out what our projections for next year's enrollment is going to be. And we continue to refine that model as we are trying to get better at predicting what our enrollments are likely to be. So the question is, what should our projected enrollment be? That is the first column that shows you this was done last year to look at what our enrollments were going to be for this fall. The second column shows what we actually achieved in terms of enrollments. And if you look at the overall number, it's good. We exceeded our projection by about 4%. But I think that's a bit of a mixed picture, as you can see, because we clearly were under, our actual results were under what our projections were, both for in-state students as well as for non-resident students. Where we clearly exceeded is, of course, our accelerated online students, and we've talked a little bit about that over the past year. So we had this tremendous growth, and this is hard to predict because there is no historical trend to really go with, and we just have to say, as we bring on more and more programs, what's going on. I want to come back to this topic about what can we be doing about the other elements, not just the AOL, which is clearly helping us meet our enrollment, both our enrollment and revenue projections. So let's go to the next slide. This is showing us the total enrollment by classification. And I think we want to point out a few things here that gives you a sense of where we ended up with this in this year. This is all both degree and non-degree seeking students. I believe we point out to a few things, so let's just go through a couple of them. Let's just stop there. So again, I'll give you a little bit of time to absorb as much of this as possible. It shows kind of the 1-year trend, a 3-year trend for our numbers over the last 3 falls, with continuing undergraduate, continuing graduate, as well as our law, new students, new freshmen, transfers, graduates, and the total picture there. So you can see there is a bit of a sense of mixed results here. We are still short when it comes to continuing undergraduate students. That has a lot with our retention and persistence numbers, a theme I will come back to in a little bit later on about what we have to do to, as we said, that is the focus of Success by Design writ large, so we can see where we have some elements there. Clearly, our continuing graduation numbers, graduate student numbers are robust. It's because of the AOL numbers as well. And you can see where we are in some of the others. The new freshman numbers were down 1.5%. We were projecting that to be about down 1% or so. So it's about that. The transfers was definitely a surprise. I think our prediction was it would be down about 4%, and it actually turned out to be even bigger than that, largely due to the fact that many of the enrollments in KCTCS, including, of course, our partner Gateway, has seen a sharp decline the last few years, in this last year in particular. So we still have some work to do here relative to looking at our enrollments. But let's look at some of the more positive news that we have overall. I shared this with you, I think, a little bit in the early part of the fall convocation about where we were trending, and we do have the final results now. What you see are the different fall freshman cohorts that we've had over the last several years. Going back to 2012, what has been our overall retention of the freshman students from fall to the following fall, and then across the different groups. Overall, underrepresented students, first generation, and low income. We're tracking all of them now as we see where we are with that. Because not only is it important to get the overall retention levels higher, but we also want to focus on closing the achievement gap, right? It's not going to be enough to say that one number is going up, but our gaps still remain persistent. That's where we have a lot of work to continue to do. So from 2012 cohorts onwards till 2015 and 2016, we saw steady increases in our fall-to-fall retention of the freshman class, right? Roughly, we take in anywhere from about 1,900 to 2,000 students or so. We're tracking what that progress that. We reached a high of, in 2016, the 2016 number was 72.5%. And then a year ago, we saw this fairly dramatic, rather unexpected and alarming drop from 72.5% to 68.6%, right? It put everybody on notice saying, what just happened? And so last fall, if you remember, was when I just started, I talked about this being a rather challenging situation, because when you see a big drop of about 4 percentage points, you have to wonder what's going on and what can we do to do this. And as you recall, we put some one-time dollar to start really ramping up some of the work that had to have happened to make sure that we don't have the same challenge again with the cohort that was starting last year in the fall of 2018. For that cohort, we have seen that we have now hit 72.1%. So the good news is we've regained that drop. We're still a ways away from where we want to be, but we've regained the drop. More importantly, we have closed achievement gaps in several of the groups that we are seeing here. Not all of them, but certainly, as you see, in the groups that you see with respect to the URM students as well. So some really good positive signs here with respect to our retention numbers. Again, this is a theme I'm going to come back to in just a second. Where are we with respect to our 6-year graduation rates? This is kind of, it still remains the national benchmark. How long does it take for a student to complete the baccalaureate in 150% of the time, that's why they talk about the 6-year graduation. We also track the 4-year graduation. It's not the one that most agencies look for, but it is the 6-year graduation. Again, you can see where we have been over the years, making somewhat of a steady process, but we still need work to do there. This, the fall 2012 cohort, which graduated last year in 2018, had the highest 6-year graduation rate for NKU in its history. It's still not something that we want to proudly put out there. It's still under 44%. We've seen some gains in our URM and low-income numbers as well, but there's still a gap there that we have to close, and we continue to push that forward. And again, I'm going to share some of this data later on in terms of where we have to do. Okay, so let's look ahead then to next spring. And then we'll try and somehow put all this together. So where are we with respect to next spring with respect to our enrollment? Again, what this shows you is what our first column is, where our projection is. The second column shows you what the actual is as of today, or as of this week. Where's Kim? As of Monday. Okay, as of Monday. So our projection for spring 2020 is on the first column, and we are roughly 73.3% of the way to what we need to meet to get to our projection number. I'm going to talk about, I'm making a big distinction in the time that we've been here about projections versus targets or goals, right? The projection is really based on a historical analysis. What does the data from the historical trend tell us to do? What is it projecting it to be? It's a forecast. That's what it is. I want to switch the conversation, not entirely, but I'm going to switch the conversation from what is our projection, which is what the data tells us by looking at the historical trend, to what we should aspire to be, and to provide targets to departments, colleges, divisions, in terms of the various elements. That's where the accountability is going to start showing up a little bit more, right? To say, okay, the projection or the forecast is almost like, this is where we ended up with, because that's what the model shared. But what can we do in addition to that to affect that outcome in a way that changes the trajectory of our enrollments and our student success outcomes? So we're going to start having more and more conversations about what those targets are, what is a realistic target, what makes sense, and then what are the strategies and tactics we need to use to achieve those targets, right? So that conversation is happening as we speak, and it's going to continue. So this is just a projection. We're about 73% of the way. We're at 65.6% and about 80% of the way for non-residents, and you can see where the percentage changes are. We go to the next slide. You'll see this in a slightly different format. Our folks in enrollment management and IR are very excited about the use of Microsoft Power BI, which is a great tool that they're going to use to help analyze a lot of the data. And so it's telling us where are we relative to spring to this date. We have to carefully monitor what we are doing at this point. And you can see, again, this is the number I shared with you earlier. We're at 7,402 students, which is about 73.3% of the goal of 10,094. The black line there that I hope you can see that shows 7344 is this was the actual spring enrollment the same time last year. Okay? So we're trending slightly better than where we are last year. But again, I'm going to challenge ourselves to do something a little bit more, and you'll see that in just a second as we do this. So this is a sort of Power BI. My sense is we're going to be rolling this out to the campus writ large as we do more training so that all the departments, deans have a better access to the data and kind of see what's going on and hopefully be able to discuss some ways in which we can make some impact on our targets. So let's keep moving. So this shows you, and I'm going to come back to budget in just a few minutes, but obviously we track enrollment. A big part of our bottom line is financial sustainability. We want to make sure that's still the major driving force for our revenue, right? So how are we tracking to revenue for next year? I'll show the big picture in just a second, but right now we're tracking at 52.5 million, which is about 74.4% of our projection for about $71 million for the spring semester. So we are there. Again, to compare with the same time last year, at this time, we were tracking at about 48.3 million. So we're a little bit ahead of last year's tracking with respect to our tuition revenue, but we still have a ways to go to close the gap by the time we reach our projection numbers. Okay, so let's look at this chart. This is what I'm talking about, which is changing the narrative a little bit from just projections to targets. So the exercise that the deans, academic affairs, and enrollment management have been engaged in is to say, all right, so if we were to get to the same level of enrollment as last spring of 2019, what would each of the colleges have to attain, right? So everyone see kind of what we're trying to do here, right? So if we want to hit the same enrollment levels as spring of 2019, what do each of the colleges have to hit in the spring of 2020? So that's what this is trying to show. So what you can see is the first column shows you the goals by college, overall, AOL, and colleges without AOL, of course, in that. So we've taken that out. These would be the goals we would each have to hit in order for us to be able to reach our goal of the same level, flat level of enrollment for spring of 2019. And you can see kind of where things are at this stage relative to our goal. So I know this is a slightly newer approach of thinking a little bit, but it's kind of telling us where we are relative to where we need to be. And of course, the work that remains to be made between now and the start of the spring semester and well into the first weeks of the spring semester to make sure there is no attrition. Okay? All right. So this is, again, the same sort of number to, well, this is actually looking at the first spring retention. So now we're focusing only on the fall freshman class. Okay, so the class of 2023, the class that began with us early part of, in August of this year, right? So in August of this year, the class that started with us, we wanted to say, this is the entering cohort. 74% of those are registered for spring, right? This is the class we're tracking right now, and this would be the fall to spring retention. We are only slightly ahead of where the previous cohort of last year was tracking. Last year at this time, the previous cohort was at 73.8%. We're just about at 74%. So we're tracking just a little bit ahead of our retention. Okay? So this is our fall to spring retention. It's valid because we're going to talk a little bit about a stretch goal we're going to give ourselves. So let's go to the next slide. All right. So here's the stretch goal. The stretch goal is, what if we were to have a 75% retention for our fall 2019 freshman class? So if we were to say for the class of 2023, we want to hit a 75% retention goal for fall for that class. That means for next fall, fall 20, we want to see 75% of those students return back for their sophomore year. Is everyone with me on this? Remember what we did this past year. The previous year, we saw that alarming drop. We went backwards. From 72 point something percent, we hit 68.6%. And we readied the ship, we steadied the ship, we came back up to 72%. What I'm saying now is we're going to challenge ourselves to go from 72%, 3 percentage points more, to 75%. Okay? That's the challenge we have. So if we were to go to 75% retention for our fall 2019 freshman cohort, what does that mean for each of the colleges? Okay, so you can see where we are. What the analysis showed us is in order for us to hit a 75%, it's just basically backward induction, right? In order for us to hit a 75% goal for fall of 2020, our spring retention for that cohort needs to be 91.4%. We need to retain 91.4% of our fall class this next spring in order for them to hit 75% the following fall. Historically, this past year, we hit 87.4% fall to spring retention, which gave us a 72%. So if you're following the numbers here, right? We started off with a class of 2018. In fall of 2019, their retention was 72%. That class's spring retention was 87.4%. So we've got to increase that by about 4 percentage points next spring in order for us to hit the target of 75% in fall. So those are where we are relative to our different colleges with respect to that target. And as you can see, the current goals have been set at 91% across each of the colleges. It's a flat goal. Now, that may not be the best. It's not the most, and there can be arguments and discussions about what it means, and we'll go through all that as we start really shifting the conversation more to targets and goals. But for the time being, this was a kind of a simple back-of-the-envelope approach to say, what would it take for us to hit 75%? All right, so where we are, you can see with respect to each of the colleges and what we have to do to get to that 91.4% in order for us to hit our fall numbers. Okay, so CPE, the Council of Post-Secondary Education, and this is a one-year lag, so if you'll see the numbers, you'll say, wait a second, I thought you just said 72%. I'm right. But this is a one-year lag. This was the prior years, so it still unfortunately shows up on their website as showing the 68.6, which was, as you saw earlier, last year's retention. So CPE now has a new data center. Some of you may have seen this. Some of you are aware of this. They launched it earlier this fall. The purpose of having that data center was to have a common place where all the data across the 8 public institutions of the Commonwealth could be easy to find and easy to see. There are multiple things on that data center. If you haven't had a chance, you should go that. The web link is down there, cpe.ky.gov/data. It's across multiple things, degrees awarded, dual credit, everything under the sun. It's all a way to manage our conversation about hitting our 60% educational attainment goal for all Kentuckians by the year 2030. That's part of the CPE strategic agenda. It's very much consistent, aligned with our Success by Design framework. Frankly, one can argue that's a modest goal. Most other states have a 65% goal, and a few states like Massachusetts and Minnesota have a 70% goal by the year 2025. In other words, 70% of the population of that state will have an educational attainment degree, certificate, or credential beyond high school. In this new knowledge-based global economy, the benchmark for learning is not high school anymore. We've known that for the longest time. We will argue it continues to be baccalaureate and beyond, but anything beyond high school attainment is a goal that each of the states have set for themselves, and Kentucky has set a goal of 60% for the state by the year 2030. That's the 60 by 30 goal, and so part of that has been there. Before we go to enrollment challenges, let's go back to the other one. All right, so what I wanted to share with you is this is mindful information, because now we're looking at a place where we can look at this. This gives you a snapshot, and I'm going to end the conversation a little bit later on with another sort of comparison that will give you a better sense of how things are. But this just shows us where we are. Many of you know our performance funding model is based on how we perform on student success outcomes. There's a great deal of support across the Commonwealth, especially in the General Assembly, that if we are going to be asking for more funding for performance funding, for funding, it has to be based on actual outcomes. So they're going to be looking at a lot of these, which is both degree attainment, but also building momentum across multiple criteria, and I think we've shared that with you as well. So where do we compare with everybody else? Again, as I said, this is about a year's lag of data, but more and more, we're going to be looking at how do we compare with peers, how do we compare with other institutions in Kentucky, and so on and so forth. Because when we talk about the value proposition, that's going to be something that's going to be there as well. All right, so let's switch to a little bit of how should we be approaching this work. And these are conversations I know are occurring across the institution, but something that we want to make sure we point out to. So what are some of the challenges that we're well aware of? Right? We know some of these things are true. Number one, if you look at simply the high school demographic, that is in fact clearly a challenge. We've known that for a while. The percentage of high school graduates is expected to decline in the tri-state area. 9% in Ohio, about 6% in Indiana, about 3% in Kentucky. We know that it's a challenge. Over the next 10 years, we're going to see that decline. So we already know this is going to happen. A quarter of the ninth graders, I'm going to show you that in a more visible sense in just a second, will not graduate from high school, and less of half of them will enter college. And then we also know that full-time and part-time enrollments at community colleges have declined. So this is kind of a very quick snapshot of the environmental scan we have to deal with. All right, let's look at the next. I think some of you may have seen this. We may have shared this in one of the previous discussions. But this just talks about the pipeline that we currently have in Kentucky, Ohio, Indiana, and we threw Tennessee in for good measure. And of course, nationally, where are we? With 100 ninth graders starting school, unless something's changed right now, only 75 of them will graduate high school. Only 47 of those 75 will go on to enter college. And only 31 of those will persist to their sophomore year. And then only 19 of them will graduate in 6 years. If this is a classic example of a leaky pipeline. So while that number is shrinking, while the high school demographics number is shrinking over the next decade, the fact of the matter is we don't have to be sitting back and saying, well, that's just the way it is. High school numbers are declining. We have an ability to impact this by working very closely with our K through 12 partners. Where, in fact, are the leaky pipelines going on? And of course, in the second half of the table is where we have a great deal of responsibility. Why are only 31 of those continuing to persist in their sophomore year and only 19 of them graduating in 6 years? So we have our work cut out for us in terms of what we have to do, reinforcing, I think, in certainly our minds, the importance of success by design. What are some of the opportunities to help shape the story, shape the enrollment we want, right? So let's look at some of the trends that we're already seeing. Over 1/3 of the students in the country are age of over 25. We're talking about the adult student population. We've used the term post-traditional. Many of you have heard that quite often. Post-traditional students, we stopped saying non-traditional. That's no longer politically correct, I guess. But post-traditional means you have one of several attributes. You're either over 25, you're either first generation, you're either low income, you're either taking care of a child or a parent. There are so many elements of that. 1/3 of the students will be age 25, half of them will work. In fact, that number for us is significantly higher. And I want to make sure I quote this right. Over 80% of our students, right, are working either part-time or more than 10 to 20 hours a week. 1 out of every 4 students is raising a child. 1 out of every 3 Kentucky students, we already have a higher percentage than that at NKU. More Kentucky students are pursuing STEM, though males still outpace females in STEM credentials earned. And underrepresented minority enrollment is projected to increase despite the other change that we're seeing. So here is where I would submit is where we have some clear opportunities to shape the enrollment of NKU in the future, right? And some great work is already going on. I want to make sure that we highlight some of the outreach and planning work that is undertaken by the Enrollment Management Division with input and collaboration across each of the divisions and with the academic affairs area as well. So lots of good work that continues to happen. I will come back to some of the things a little bit later on about where we could be heading for next spring and beyond. But let me also continue with a few more updates. I want to make sure we're mindful of the time as well. Okay, so a couple of quick updates. Pension, let's go to the next slide. We've shared this a little bit before. Pension forums have been held for all the employees. This is something we'll continue to do. We are working in partnership with Eastern and Western to request, to get a firm to help us with services that will assist us to analyze the options in House Bill 1 that is out there, including financing options if we choose to go that route. So that's going on. In the next few weeks, we'll be making a final decision on that as well. And for everyone else who has questions about this, please continue to go and visit our Pension Central website for updates. There's also a link where you can submit questions, and HR will be actively looking at that as well. I wanted to share with you just a quick update from CPE. Again, some of you may know this, but the Council of Post-Secondary Education is tasked with taking a consensus budget request proposal on behalf of all the universities and the community and technical college system to the state legislature. The end of October, they came up with their proposal. This is what they're going to request. They're requesting for the next biennium, $52.5 million, which is about a 6.2% increase, and $75 million in the second year of the biennium, which is about an 8% increase in the second year. The second part of the request, so it's a very simple, straightforward, clean request, which we all supported. One was performance funding, the other one was asset preservation. The second part was $200 million each year in the biennium for asset preservation to address the nearly $6 billion of need across the Commonwealth due to the aging infrastructure and state-owned buildings and facilities that we have. So that's the $400 million will be, state bond will be matched by a $200 million match of campus funds, so it's a 2-to-1 match. So NKU, if this were approved, we would see approximately $30 million of the total that is being requested, which is about $20 million from the state and about $10 million as an NKU match. So we'll keep you posted on seeing where that information may come up. All right, I'm going to go over some of the budget highlights as well and updates as well as where we are. This was a slide we have shared with the President's Council earlier this semester, but I wanted to make sure that we could share it broadly with the campus. Just a summary of how did we end the year last year, right? Where did we end up with the year last year? At a very high level, what does the year's numbers look like? And I wanted to make sure that all of you were familiar with this. So the first column there is the budget. That was what we allocated across the different areas, both for revenue and expenditures. And then, of course, when we close the books, as it were, we look at what the actuals were. The next column shows you what the actuals, and then it talks about whether, in fact, we were favorable or unfavorable in terms of the variance between the budget and the actual expenditures and revenues as you turned out. Quick thing to point out, again, no surprise, our big challenge last year because of the enrollment issue was the tuition and fees, the gross tuition and fees. We saw a $5.2 million reduction in our tuition fees. All of you were probably aware a little bit about that. Fortunately for us, we had a rather large increase in our AOL tuition, which was over $13.5 million. Remember, we have the 50% share model in that agreement. And so, of course, that's reflected in the operating side as well. So given all that, we saw a modest increase in other revenue due to some good investment returns that we had. We did see a slight decrease in our state appropriation number that we had anticipated. And then, of course, you can see where the expenditures are relative to the personnel and other issues that we had to do with ending of the year last year. At the end of the year, we did end on a fairly strong note. We had about $11.3 million net position, which is where we ended up this past year. And as you will see in a few minutes, and I've made the announcement, we have allocated a lot of this is in carry forward funds, but we've allocated $2 million towards supporting strategic success by design, the framework. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. So that's kind of pretty much where we ended up the year last year. This shows us where we are right now. This is our FY20 budget. What was the budget last year? What is the budget that we proposed this year? And of course, where does that compare to last year's budget? It gives you a bit of a sense of where things are. Clearly, of course, the accelerated online tuition revenue is the big bump, as you see in this case, and then we have some of the others. The increase in our budget for personnel is because of the compensation increase that we put in place this year, and it's a commitment that I hope we can continue to make on a pretty regular basis for the campus, given, of course, the hard work of our faculty and staff. So you can see kind of the picture between the previous year and this year on a pretty macro level. We, of course, continue to track this. So as we move to the next slide, you will see kind of where we are with respect to fall projections on tuition. Again, we are $2.7 million short in the fall with our tuition revenue, 1.5 million short on the non-resident piece. So that is one of the big concerning factors that we continue to see. There's where the softening of the in-state and non-resident tuition makes an impact. As a result of that, those declines are something we have to monitor very carefully. Again, fortunately, we exceeded our expectations relative to the AOL revenue, and so that's sort of still keeping us in a relatively safe position. I wouldn't say we're out of the woods. This is always a question of concern. And then looking ahead, I think, to the next slide, we'll see where we are. Oh, we don't have the fall 20, the slide. Okay, so we're just tracking right now where we will be at this stage. And once those numbers come in, we want to pay attention to where things are. I already shared with you the enrollment numbers as well. Okay? All right, so let me quickly go through a few more updates on Success by Design before we wrap this up. I'm not going to spend a great deal of this time. A few weeks ago, we had an open forum around this. These are our first 5 initiatives that folks are actively in work with. I think we have a slide that shows the implementation teams. I want to make sure that all of you are familiar with these. We have those across those 5 initiatives. We have these 5 implementation teams. This is sort of the structure that has been put into place. Again, I'm really grateful for all the work that folks are doing across campus and the implementation teams with coordination by our VP and Chief Strategy Officer, Vaidya. So you can see all the folks in there. Plenty of work to be done as we keep going. We'll see and the final piece, of course, is the Unleash Innovation piece. We've got the Strategic Investment Innovation Funding. I mentioned the $2 million. 1.5 is going to be set aside for the first 5 initiatives, and the $500,000 is for the open to the entire campus for ideas that you may have. I've heard some tidbits from folks already, and I'm really excited to see what folks are coming up with. It seems like people are really revving up their thought process to come up with some great ideas. So again, this is something that was shared widely. If you haven't done it, please, there's still time. December 6th, I believe, is the deadline. We have all this information already on the website. This is the timeline, December 6th, the website, and on the 17th of January, we'll have the proposal competition, and you'll be seeing that. The Strategic Advisory Group is going to be looking at the proposals as the first round to come up with that as well. So we'll be working pretty much on this. And as I said, this is the website, nku.edu Innovation Challenge. If you haven't had a chance, please go and visit there. All the information, including the ways in which you can submit your proposals, is out there. Just another reminder, I've shared this many, many times. We started up this conversation last week. What are we all working towards? What is success going to look like? And those were the 5 big things that we want to make sure we are aspiring to be. We want to see superior peer-leading student success outcomes. We want to see innovative public-private partnerships, transparency, collaboration, and alignment to support a more sustainable NKU overall to ensure growth and longevity, and of course, a strong NKU brand and identity. I want to end with the last couple of slides that I have on this, and then hopefully we still have a few minutes for questions. This is something that came out very recently. The Georgetown University Center for Education and Workforce. I follow them closely. They do a lot of good work. They came out with what they called a first try at return on investment by ranking all 4,500 colleges and universities around the country. Pretty amazing scope of work here, right? And they analyze this, and of course, every ranking has its pros and cons. And I think most people will probably adhere, those who know me say I'm always very skeptical of rankings because it all depends on how you figure this out. But the reason I wanted to bring this up is because return on investment is something we've certainly been hearing a great deal of, certainly over the past decade, and it's something that's not gonna, everyone's asking, including at the last board meeting. If I remember, one of our Board of Regents asked, well, what is the value? How can we really show the value of our programs, of our university, and so on and so forth? So what you have there is a lot of information, and I would again encourage you, there is on the website of the Georgetown Center, you can do this, you can play with the data as best you can, but it shows you the ranking across different dimensions. Number one is on what is the value of future earnings today. That's the net present value. That's what the NPV stands for, right? The net present value is how much future earnings is valued at today. So it looks at a 10-year NPV. What would your earnings in 10 years be valued at today? What would your earnings in 20 years be valued today? And what would your earnings in 40 years be valued today? What is your 10-year earnings rank as it currently stands? What is the median level? And of course, what is your graduation rate rank and your graduation rate? We're going to be having to deal with all this on a regular basis. But I pulled up our universities in Kentucky, and for good measure, I threw in University of Cincinnati and Miami as well, and said, let's kind of look at this. And I want to show out a few things. The green shows really good positive information for us. The light green, yeah, it's still pretty good. And then, of course, the red is where we know we have some work to do. So what does it show? What does the data show? Northern Kentucky University outperforms every institution that I have listed there when it comes to the 10-year net present value of earnings. I think that's pretty remarkable, right? We lose a little bit of ground in the 20-year NPV rank. We go down to 1,600 as the rank, and you can see University of Kentucky and Louisville have just about exceeded us by that time. Miami has certainly exceeded us by that time, but we're still ahead of everybody else, including the University of Cincinnati. And then we find some modest changes in the 40-year rank. We're not quite in the same thing, so perhaps 40 years down the road. Now, that's something that we have to just sort of talk about lifelong learning and what we could do to bring some of the alums back for maybe upskilling or whatever the case may be. What's our median earnings, and of course, but I'm also very proud of our net price rank right there. Talks about how affordable we are as an institution, right? And you can see there that our net price rank is in fact really quite remarkable. Compared to every other institution that we have, I think barring Kentucky State that has a slightly different structure, our net price is significantly better than every other institution on that list. And so it's really remarkable. And of course, this was again a lag. This was from the previous year, so our graduation rate is now at 43%. But the fact of the matter is it's still not where it needs to be, as we all clearly know. So I wanted to just share this with you because it again points to a lot of good work that we have, and as others are beginning to look at return on investment writ large, this is again very much aligned with our Success by Design framework. So the last thing that I want to share with you is an article that actually came out just last week in Cincinnati Magazine. If you haven't had a chance to look at it, please do. It's a very short piece. I love the graphic, and I said, let's make sure we put that in there. Kind of a mean-looking Norse, as you can see. But the point of the article was about NKU and the fact that this is the headline: NKU is making a name for itself. The major players in higher ed locally have long been the University of Cincinnati and Xavier, but NKU is proving itself a force to be reckoned with. And the article ends with this quote that you have up there. It's an institution with a solid degree programs and a desire to grow opportunities for students. NKU knows who it is, and the rest of us are just finding out. I thought it was a really nice piece that, in a very succinct way, kind of captured the essence of us, our brand and our identity. The author, when she spoke to me a couple of months ago, the message was she wanted to talk to me about comparing us to University of Cincinnati and Miami and Xavier. That was the thrust of it. And hopefully she captured exactly what we are. This is who we are. We're not trying to compare ourselves with anyone else. What we're here is we're driving regional economic and social prosperity for the region by serving students, typically first in their families, to go to college, which of course has been the overarching way. So just a quick look ahead at spring 2020. We return to campus on January 6th. That's our classes begin on the 13th. On Friday, January 17th, instead of doing spring convocation, in fact, many of you will remember last year, we didn't do the same thing. We actually did the showing of the documentary Unlikely. If you remember, that was how we started spring convocation. We're going to have an inaugural Student Success Summit and the 2020 NKU Innovation Challenge. That's going to happen on that Friday from 9 to noon. I hope all of you can make it for that. It's going to be great. The summit will start off with a panel. For the first hour, Ryan Padgett has agreed to moderate a panel. We have 3 guests. All have confirmed. One of them is President Reese, Anton Reese from West Kentucky Community and Technical College. You'll wonder why that name came up, and the reason it came up, because I was Googling and searching the Aspen Institute website. The Aspen Institute website has an Excellence Award and a recognition of community colleges around the country. And I found out that West Kentucky Community and Technical College is the only community and technical college in Kentucky that's been nominated for the Excellence Award prize 4 times. They've been a finalist 4 times. And that's pretty remarkable. So I wanted to find out, what are they doing? What is so great? So he's going to come here. We're delighted to have him here as well. The second individual is going to be Bridgett Ramsey. She is the executive director of the Pritchard Committee. They do a great deal of work around academic excellence, and affordability is their big theme right now. I've heard her speak, and I've had a chance to meet with her. I think she brings a great voice to the conversation. And the third individual is the Associate Provost for Academic Affairs and Student Affairs at the University of Kentucky, Kirsten Turner, who has led the effort over the last several years in pushing the student success outcomes at the University of Kentucky. I've been hearing a lot about the good work that they're doing, and so certainly wanted to get her perspective. She oversees both academic affairs and student affairs, and getting that perspective would be highly valued. So we're looking forward to that, and then the second half will be the Innovation Challenge again. So we have one more slide, I think, right? Ways you can help. All right? This is what I hope you all take away with you as you take a break for Thanksgiving and spend hopefully time with family and friends. And of course, looking ahead to the break as well. Help us reach that goal of 75% retention. It's not out of the question. Last year, we proved it to ourselves. We could go from 68.6 to 72%. I see no reason why we can't do 72% to 75%. Okay, so I want us to all roll our sleeves. If there's some things we can all do together, let's figure out a way to make that happen. Align your work with the Strategic Success by Design framework. Again, reinforce our students that they belong here. This is the time when we want to make sure they don't lose connection. Continue to be an ambassador for NKU. I'll be sending out Darren Horn to make sure that all of us are wearing the right gear. But I think it's so important that we take great pride in who we do and what we do. If there's a way for you to support our campaign, Further Faster campaign, please do so. Submit your proposals. And of course, last but certainly not the least, make sure that you do spend time to rejuvenate and relax during the break. Before the break, though, we know we will have commencement in just a few weeks, Saturday, December 14th. It's always a favorite time of the year for all of us, not just because it's the holiday season, but because we get to make sure that so many of our students cross the stage with such great delight. And so I hope all of you will join me for that wonderful celebration to uplift our students and continue on their journey with NKU. On that note, I want to thank you again for your time and effort today and being here. And we have 10 minutes for questions. So barely a few minutes for questions. And Krista and Tammy will help with the mics. So. Maybe we can dim the lights a little further now, right? Questions or comments? Feedback, thoughts? Doesn't have to be a question, anything that... Okay, there we go.
How comfortable is NKU to be real specific to parents and prospective students about that return on investment?
Yeah.
Because I know when we bring students to campus and to our departments to recruit them, parents want those answers.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
are we comfortable sharing that data? Do marketing and communications come up with something specific that we can know?
You know, so the question, I hope everyone heard Cecile's question. It's about how can we, I think, I'm going to paraphrase your question a little bit. How can we better tell our story as a collective? You know, it's a long-standing, I'm looking to my business colleagues here, this long-standing notion of saying one brand, one voice, one vision, right? And I think as we are solidifying that for NKU, it is really the value proposition. It is the return on investment. But when you come to NKU, the return on the time, energy, resources that you spend here will pay itself in dividends, not only in successful careers, but also as engaged members of the community. The second statistic I share with many of the business and community members here, 82% of our graduates stay in this region. We are the driving force of the talent, research, and innovation needs of this region. We are not like some of the other institutions where half or three-quarters of their students go elsewhere. This region would not be prosperous without us. We have to find a better narrative in a way that appeals to parents. And by the way, you bring up that question. It was very similar to the kind of question that many of the parents of our prospective international students in Vietnam were asking. They were saying the same thing. If we are going to allow our students to come all the way there to study, what kind of career options do they have? They didn't say return on investment, but that's really what they meant. So I know our marketing and comm folks around, we do have to come up with a very clear-cut message about our return on investment. And things like this, if we don't tell our story, who is? And they're going to find out and seek something else and come up with all kinds of other reasons. And they don't pay attention to the fact that we are outperforming, at least on the 10 and 20-year net present value of future earnings, every other institution in Kentucky, and mostly even the big school across the river. I think this is a story we have to proudly share, and we all have to collectively rise to that notion. So we have some work to do in better refining and telling that story, but we've been making some good inroads, I think, in making sure we actually continue to do that. So thank you for that. Yes?
So on the retention rate among the different schools in Kentucky, what's the proportion of commuter aspect of those other schools, and how much does an on-campus presence mean for students in terms of their retention? I think it's a big role.
Yeah. So it's a great question. The question is, how much does the sort of a commuter, and we know that, and the data shows it even for our own students, as opposed to the national numbers as well. Staying on campus, especially in your first year, is highly correlated with higher retention numbers. And my understanding is we strongly encourage, require students to stay on campus first. We don't require it. We don't require it, but if you're within a, yeah. And so, you know, again, as we constantly try and think about what we want to do, and also sort of the idea is how do we build community around the radius of what? So maybe they're not all staying right on campus, but just across the street we have so many apartment complexes and things like that that kind of make it, you know, make it different. So the fact of the matter is, I don't know if there's any one thing that we can point to, right? If only we had more students that were less. I think we have to work with the kind of student personas and personalities we have. Students who are juggling work, that need to travel, that need to stay at home, that need to find a way. And this is all the question about how to become a student-ready institution. It's not about saying, well, these are our timings and this is how we have to do this, but to say, all right, how can we make it easier for you to continue and not stop out? And that's really the big goal that we're all aspiring to be. Examining every element of our policies, procedures, incentives, rewards to make sure that we are in fact making sure that all the students, no matter what their pathway to NKU is, that they found a way. That's going to be sort of the norm. I just shared with a few people a report that came out recently about a innovative new college. It's called College Unbound. Have folks heard about that yet? I shared it with Andy and Amy Danzo and a few folks in our adult. It's a new college in, is it Massachusetts? Where is it? It's a new college. It's geared entirely to support adult learners. And the work that they're doing there is showing some tremendous regard. So the question is, that's why when we put up that first slide about the NKU student profile, it's kind of important that we think about, there isn't that same, this is the standard 18-year-old who comes straight from high school to college. No, that's not the case anymore. We have a lot of variation. And so our challenge is, how do we match our student support services, our engagement strategy, our pathways to serve those multiple student constituents? And we all need to kind of help figure that out. That was sort of the core of why we engaged in Success by Design in the first place. We used the sort of design thinking approach to say, what kind of students do we serve? And you can just see by the fact of the matter is, we have an obligation, and we live up to that by most counts, to make sure that each and every individual and student who's chosen to come and seek their educational experience at NKU, that we find a way to help them succeed. We are close to being out of time. I want to make sure that I'm respectful of everyone's time and everything else. Again, thank you all for taking the time to come out. I wish you all a great rest of the week, a happy Thanksgiving, and I hope to see all of you certainly at commencement and as we kick off spring 2020. Thanks again.